when you enter the exhibition, we have two entry points. You enter the residential tract home section of the exhibition. And I think just by way of introduction, a lot of people ask, well, why suburbia? We addressed a little bit of that. It's because most people live in suburbia, and most people have an immediate reaction, either positive or negative, about suburbia. And I think this is an interesting place to begin in people's attitudes.
The projects that we're presenting here are perhaps most notable for their modesty, in the sense that in most cases they propose modest interventions that acknowledge the conditions that many people who are critical of suburbia, forms part of that critique. So, for example, this program by FAT, and FAT is an English firm based in the East End of London. It stands for Fashion, Architecture, Taste. The very fact that FAT is willing to take head-on the notion of taste as an architectural firm is rather courageous.
Our two photographs from Larry Sultan, who's based in Oakland, but who has done several different series in his artistic career. An earlier one was devoted to his mother and father, who live in the San Fernando Valley. And by doing that series, and from the fact that he grew up there and he later moved to the Bay Area, but he was on commission. He also does commercial photography. He was on commission for an article about the pornography industry. And he discovered that that a lot of the homes in the San Fernando Valley are used as stage sets for the adult film industry. And so he became quite fascinated with this world of where on the exterior everything seems very calm and quaint and nice, but behind the scenes there's a lot of strange things happening. And so he's very interested in the moments between sort of the takes where the talent is relaxing, or you start seeing a little bit of intrusion of these, like, the light, camera lights and the microphones happening, but in this very sort of, idyllic kind of community, sort of very the real Desperate Housewives, maybe. This is from an architect, Teddy Cruz, who is based in San Diego. He was originally born in Guatemala, educated at Harvard, and he is very interested in the border culture at the junction between San Diego and Tijuana. And the project is conceptually based on a phenomenon that's happening in terms of migrations from north to south, i.e. from the U.S. to Mexico, and from Mexico to the U.S. in terms of suburbia. Michael Bernwald is from a series called Universal Default, and he's actually photographed these berms in different big box stores. This one's a Walmart in Iowa, where he was born, actually. And this is, and they're different states of growth and decay. This one is with a straw being laid out. Obviously, they're trying to encourage grass to grow. But he photographs them at night using the existing parking lot lighting. So there's no artificial lighting used, using a large view 4x5 camera. So there's an intense amount of detail.
And what these photographs represent or show are test tracks, automotive test tracks, which are, photographed in this way, kind of read like lines incised in the landscape.
What the developer is trying to do is obviously sitting on the property waiting for the values to increase, because it's not like the area is dead around it, it's just this location doesn't work. So that, when you're sitting on the property, it's called land banking. And so that's one of the titles of it. This project is called In the Meantime, Life with Land Banking. And what they're interested in as architects are more smaller interventions and gestures in terms of what can happen during this process of just sitting on the property. So there's a whole range of activities that's suggested, which is reflected here. And there's like a whole list. It's not like they're proposing one thing, like, oh, this should become a daycare center or a convention hall. It's really about tiny gestures, like maybe we could have a nightclub, maybe we could have a car wash, maybe we could do an outdoor concert area, maybe we could have even have a sculpture garden. So they're looking at it in a very pragmatic,
incremental.
We call it anti-heroic architectural vision.
Yeah. I think that once you, again, dig beneath that layer of assumption, that top layer of assumption about how suburbia is the same everywhere, whether it's, the first-ring suburb of New York City or the exurban sprawl of Denver, Colorado, there really are distinguishing characteristics, and it's that individuality that I think you see in projects like the Pahomon Circle K projects. 50% of the population in this country lives in suburbs. There's a reason for that. There are things in suburbs that people want. We're not going to make people suddenly want to be urbanites. So to contend with the reality architects are sort of taking these things on their terms, not taking it upon themselves to eradicate all the negative consequences of suburbanization, but saying, okay, this is perhaps not ideal. We can tweak it in a way that doesn't necessitate eradicating the entire place. I mean, that's not going to happen. So these projects are pragmatic and incremental, and in some cases they're not even meant to be permanent measures, but sort of temporary measures to sort of give people time to think in a certain way.